My knuckles didn't get nicked. They split, like the skin had a seam, and I hit it with a pry bar. It was January, street salt everywhere, my gloves already soaked through, and that curb box lid would not come up. I jammed the hook tool under the notch, leaned until my shoulder screamed, and the cast iron finally popped free with that ugly tooth pull sound. The lid flipped, and snow slid off the top and straight into the hole. A breath came out, not steam, not that normal cold sewer puff you get sometimes. This was warm, wet air, the kind you feel when you open a closet after someone's been hiding in it. It slid over my face and under my safety glasses, and I actually blinked like something had touched my eyeballs. I looked down at my hand and watched blood bead up on the glove seam and darken the knit. I remember thinking very clearly, very calmly, what the fuck is wrong with this block? I read water meters for the city. Daytime, vest, tablet, a bag with tools that smell like brass and old wet pennies. Most of my job is boring. You pop a lid, you type a number, you close it, you move on. People don't even look at you. They just assume you're some guy doing some guy thing. That morning I got a new work order pushed to my tablet with a red banner I'd never seen before. Decommissioned sweep, Zone 12. And underneath, priority, no deferras. Zone 12 wasn't on the tourist map. Hell, it wasn't on most people's mental map at all. It was the area behind the big avenue where the storefronts died, then the bars died, then the people who could afford to leave left. The city called it redevelopment. We called it, we're gonna shut shit off until everyone gives up. I hated those days. Everybody hated those days. You're the face of it. You're the guy in the vest knocking on someone's last door, even if you never knock. Even if all you do is type numbers and keep walking, they look at you like you personally turned their sink into a cough. My supervisor, Dan, called while I was still parked at the yard. Not a friendly call. "Oh, what are you doing call? You see the Zone 12 sweep?" he said. "Yeah, don't get cute out there. Don't reschedule shit. The mayor's office is breathing down our necks. We need reads. We need closures. We need notes. You can handle one zone." "It's a whole zone," I said. "You're the meter guy. Go be the meter guy." Click. That's Dan. He's got a voice like a staple gun and the empathy of a parking ticket. So I drove in. The further I went, the more everything looked like it was trying to pretend it didn't exist. Boards over windows. Curtains nailed to studs. A couch on a porch like someone died, mid-move, and nobody finished. A bicycle frame chained to a fence post with no wheels, like the wheels had been stolen and the hope had been left behind. The first curb box I opened was the one that split my knuckles. Right on top of the meter register, tucked like a bookmark, was a laminated card. No city logo, no barcode, no property of, just black marker, block letters, and that greasy feeling you get when someone leaves you a note that's way too personal for the situation. Rules for Zone 12 service calls. Rule 1. Do not bleed over an open curb box. If you cut yourself, close it and leave. Do not wrap it and continue. Rule 2. If the air coming out feels warm, mark it unable to read and move on. Do not remove the meter lid. Rule 3. If you hear movement in a shut-off line, do not follow the sound. Do not put your ear to the pipe. Do not scrape any scale that looks like paper or skin. Rule 4. Do not flush any line in Zone 12 after 2:13 p.m. If you already started and you see bubbles, stop. Cap it. Walk away. Rule 5. If you find a second valve where the shutoff should be, do not turn it. Call dispatch and say, "Wrong key." If anyone offers you water, do not drink it. There's a strip of tape on the back like somebody had stuck it there and changed their mind and stuck it again. The laminate edges were chewed up from being wet too long. I stared at the list until a horn blasted behind me and I jerked like I'd been caught stealing. My hand throbbed on a glove. Blood was soaking into the insulation. My brain did this stupid little shrug. Somebody's messing with us. That's what I told myself. Prank. Crazy resident. Some old-timer with a fetish for procedure. Zone 12 had a lot of people who didn't like the city. I wouldn't like the city either if the city kept showing up with clipboards to tell me I didn't matter. And Rule 1. Rule 1 pissed me off because it was true. I had just bled over an open cur box, and the card was sitting there like it had been waiting for that exact moment so it could wag a finger at me. I should have closed the lid and left. That's what the card wanted. That's what the smart version of me wanted. Instead, I pulled electrical tape out of my pouch, wrapped my knuckle through the glove like a tourniquet for an idiot, and kept going. Because rent, because Dan, because pride, because I've spent my whole life swallowing fear like it's medicine and pretending it's fine. I slid the card into the plastic sleeve on the back of my tablet case, where we usually keep route maps. I don't know why. Evidence, maybe, or maybe because it felt wrong to leave it there. Like leaving a warning sign face down. Zone 12 wasn't quiet like rich neighborhoods are quiet. It was quiet like a hallway after a screaming match. Even the dogs didn't bark much. They watched. You'd see them behind broken fences with their heads low, eyes tracking you like you were carrying meat. Second cur box, normal, cold air, meter number read clean. I logged it and shut it. Third cur box, lid stuck. I pried. It popped. Another breath. Warm. Vet. Close. The card's rule 2 punched me right in the stomach. I held the lid half open and looked down into the hole. You never see much. A ring of dirt. A spider web. The meter yoke. Sometimes the brass is green with oxidation. Sometimes there's a cigarette, but some asshole dropped in there. This one was shiny. Not in a clean way. In a damp way. Like sweat on skin. The brass had that slick sheen, and the dirt looked dark, like it had been watered. I wanted to slam it shut. I swear I did. Then something moved. Not a drip. Not a trickle. A slide. Like a heavy thing shifting in a tight space. Like dragging a wet towel through a narrow tube. Under the street. Under my boots. In the pipe. I didn't mean to crouch. My body just did it. Knee down on salted asphalt. Face leaning toward the hole like it was a secret. Rule 3. Do not follow the sound. Do not put your ear to the pipe. I didn't press my ear to anything. I wasn't that dumb. I just leaned. The sound stopped. It didn't fade. It didn't taper. It stopped like someone let go of a switch. And the silence that followed felt directed. Like whatever made that sound had noticed the angle of my head and decided to wait. I slammed the lid shut so hard the iron rang. Locked it. Stood up too fast and got dizzy. My heart did that fluttery bullshit it does when you almost fall on ice and your body thinks you almost died. I walked to the next house fast, jaw clenched, pretending I was mad at the lid and not scared of the hole. By the 5th box, my glove was sticky inside. The tape on my knuckle was starting to loosen from sweat and blood. Every time I flexed my hand, it pulled. I stopped by my truck, peeled my glove off, and looked at the cut through the cold air. It wasn't huge, not deep, just a jagged split at the knuckle where the skin folds. But it looked pale around the edges. Not white from cold, pale like it had been soaked, like when your fingers wrinkle in the bath. That kind of pale. Get it together, I said out loud, because sometimes talking to yourself keeps your brain from running away with the worst thought. I sprayed it with disinfectant from the first aid kit. It burned. I liked the burn. It felt normal. I taped it again, tighter, and shoved the glove back on. I kept going. Warm boxes started showing up like a pattern I didn't want to admit was a pattern. Not every house. Not even every other house. Just scattered. Like someone had marked certain meters and left others alone. Like a rash, exactly. One block fine, next block breathing. I started marking unable to read on the warm ones like Rule 2 told me, but I couldn't stop myself from lifting the lid a fraction more each time. Just to look, just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Every warm box looked damp inside, even if the street was dry. Every warm box had that slick shine on the brass. One of them had a smell like wet paper. By late morning, my tablet started throwing error messages on the Zone 12 job. Little pop-ups, route conflict, verify location. Then it would snap back and show the right map again. Like it was blinking. I called dispatch because that's what you do when the stupid software acts up. Dispatch is always tired. Dispatch is always a voice you can hear eating. Water services, she said flat. It's meter reads, I said. Zone 12 sweep. My tablet's glitching. What kind of glitch? It keeps like the route reloads. It's fine. Just weird. A pause. I heard keyboard clacks. Then, keep reading what you can. Know what you can't. Yeah, I'm doing that. But there's something off. Some boxes are warm. Another pause. Longer. How warm? I should have lied. I should have said sun warm. I should have backed away from the whole thing right there and gone to the yard and told Dan the software was down. Instead, I said the truth. Like breath. Like someone exhaled in it. Silence. Then the dispatcher said, very carefully, if you can't read it, note it. Are you listening to me? I'm listening. Do you want me to report it as a leak? A cross connection? Like what's the... Just note it, she cut in. Her voice got sharper. Do not create an incident unless you have an incident. Read your route. And she hung up. I stood there staring at the phone screen, my mouth open like I was about to talk to nobody. The wind cut through my vest. A delivery truck went by and sprayed slush on my boots. On my tablet, the red priority banner on the Zone 12 suite pulsed like a heartbeat. I put my phone away and walked to the next curb box because I didn't know what else to do. Halfway down the next block, I found one already open. The lid was flipped over and sitting in the snow like someone had popped it in a hurry and forgotten to put it back. The pavement around it was scuffed, like shoes had dug in. That's a liability. That's a fine. That's the kind of thing Dan will pin on you if you're within a mile of it. I jogged over, cursing, and crouched. The meter was there. The brass body. The register. But the shut-off handle, normally a little metal T, was gone. Snapped clean. In its place was something that looked like a valve handle, except it wasn't metal. It was pale, layered, flaking at the edges, like a stack of paper pressed into shape and left to rot. Rule 3 had that line buried in it. Do not scrape scale that looks like paper or skin. My stomach lurched like I'd swallowed cold water. I leaned in anyway, because apparently I'm allergic to self-preservation. The paper had lines. Fine, branching lines like veins under skin. It wasn't perfectly still either. It shifted when the warm air from the hole moved, like a thin sheet lifting in a breeze. And there was that smell again, wet books. Vedreuel, basements. I backed up so fast my knee slipped, and I put my hand down without thinking. The taped knuckle touched the edge of the open box. Pain sparked. The tape shifted. Warm blood seeped inside my glove. I yanked my hand back like the curb box was a stove. Hey! A shout across the street. A door slammed. I looked up and saw a guy coming toward me fast. He wasn't bundled for winter. No hut. Hoodie unzipped. His face was red like he'd been yelling before I got there. He moved like anger was keeping him warm. You with water? He barked. I didn't answer quick enough, so he answered for me. Yeah, you are. Vest. Tablet. You people. I'm reading meters, I said. It's what we all say. It's the safest sentence in the job. It's supposed to mean I don't make decisions. I'm just a guy. He laughed once, sharp. Bullshit. My tap's been coughing air. 2 days. My kids can't shower. You shut us off. I don't shut. I started. He stepped onto the curb box like he was going to stomp it closed. Like his boot could fix a system. I grabbed his sleeve, more out of reflex than anything. He yanked away and the cuff of his hoodie rode up. That's when I saw his wrist. The skin around the veins looked wrong. Pale and thick, like it had been soaked and dried and soaked again. Like paper that's been glued to itself. The veins underneath didn't look blue. They looked gray. I stared for maybe half a second too long. He saw it. His face twisted. Don't look at me like that. I'm not. I lied automatically. He leaned in close. I smelled something on his breath that wasn't booze or cigarettes. Stale water. Like a bottle you left in a hot car too long. You got a key, he said, voice dropping. Turn it on. My brain flashed the card in the tablet sleeve. Rule 5, second valve, don't turn it. Call dispatch and say wrong key. If anyone offers you water, don't drink it. I swallowed and said the words before I could think. Wrong key. He blinked. What? It's wrong key. I repeated like I was reading it off a cue card. I have to call it. He grabbed my vest and jerked me hard. Call who? Call Dan? Call the fucking mayor? I need water. My glove scraped the edge of the open box as I stumbled. Pain. The tape slipped again. He saw my hand. His eyes dropped to the glove, and his whole body changed. Not calmer, not kinder, just different, like a dog catching a scent it recognizes. "Close it," he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "Close the fucking box," he hissed, and his hand on my vest trembled like he was fighting himself. Something slid down in the curb box. That same heavy, wet shift. Closer this time. Like the pipe was right under the lid and something big had rolled against it. The guy's mouth opened. For a second, I thought he was going to scream. Instead, he inhaled. Hard. Deep. Like he needed the warm air coming out of that hole. Like it was oxygen in a fire. I shoved him back with both hands. He stumbled, caught himself, and whatever trance he'd hit snapped back into plain human rage. "Fuck you," he spat, loud enough to echo off the boarded windows. "Fuck all of you." He stormed away fast, almost running, like he couldn't get distance from the curb box quick enough. I slapped the lid down with both hands and locked it. My fingers shook so bad the key rattled against the iron. I went back to the truck and sat inside with the heater blasting, staring at my glove like it was going to sprout teeth. Rule 1, don't bleed. Rule 2, don't open warm boxes. Rule 3, don't follow movement. I had broken all of them in the dumbest ways. Not even boldly, just lazily, like my body didn't believe the rules were real. I should have left Zone 12 right then. I could have driven back, told Dan I felt sick, taken a ride up, whatever. Instead, my tablet pinged again. The suite kept pushing. Addresses stacked. Priority. No de Ferraz. Around noon, I pulled into a side street to eat because my hands were shaking and I needed calories. I sat in the truck with my sandwich in one hand and my phone in the other, doom scrolling local news like that would explain anything. A hydrant 2 blocks away had been tagged with orange paint. Flush. City schedule. My stomach tightened because the rule card had that one line that felt stupid when I first read it and now felt like a loaded gun. Do not flush any line in Zone 12 after 2:13 p.m. 2:13. Who the hell picks a minute like that? I checked the time. 12:37. I tried to laugh at myself. Okay, I muttered. So someone's fucking with meter guys and making up specific times. Sure. I took a bite. Chewed. Swallowed. The sandwich tasted like nothing. Not bland. Like my tongue couldn't register it. Like my mouth was distracted by something else. I set it down and peeled my glove off again. The inside was damp. The tape was soaked through. My cut looked too clean. The jagged edges had smoothed out a little, like the skin had swollen and sealed, but not in a healthy way. The pale around it spread farther than it should have. My knuckle looked like it had been in water for hours. I flexed my hand, and the skin didn't crease right. It moved like a wet napkin. Stop, I told myself, and pushed the glove back on. Stop thinking. My phone buzzed with a text from Dan. Where you at? Need progress. I typed back. Zone 12. Halfway. Some boxes unable. He replied almost instantly. No unable, unless broken. Read the numbers. My jaw tightened. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. I started typing, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I sent. Some are warm. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then his reply. Don't start with that shit. Do your job. That was it. That was the support I got. I threw the rest of the sandwich in the trash bag, wiped my hands on my jeans, and went back out. The afternoon got worse in small ways at first. Little things that make your spine itch. At one house, the curb box lid was cold, but when I lifted it, the air was warm anyway, rising from deeper like the warmth was layered. At another, I heard the slide sound even before I opened the lid, like something moved under the pavement when my boots got close. At a boarded storefront, the curb box had been filled with something soft. I poked it with my hook tool, and it gave like wet cardboard. I didn't dig. I didn't want to know. I kept seeing that word on my tablet, decommission. It sat there like a thread. Like if I finished a route, something would finish too. At 1:58, the work order changed again. A dispatch note popped up on the sweep. Hydrant flush scheduled. Zone 12 main. Assist if needed. My throat went dry. I looked at the time on the dash. 202. I could have left. I could have driven away and pretended I never saw the note. They had crews for flushing. Meter guys don't need to assist. It was optional. It was bullshit. But the note had my employee ID attached to it like a tag. Like someone had assigned me. My phone buzzed again. Dan, of course. You see that flush? He asked. Yeah. Go over there. I don't want another complaint. Make sure they do it right. I'm a meter reader, I said, and the frustration cracked through. You're a city employee, he snapped back. Go be useful. Click. I sat for a second with my hand on the steering wheel, staring at the salt crust on my knuckles. The cut under the glove pulsed like it had its own heartbeat. I drove to the hydrant. It was on a corner where two dead streets met. One street had houses with plywood eyes. The other had a row of empty lots where buildings used to be, snow covering the broken bricks like a sheet over a body. A crew truck was already there. Two guys I recognized by face. Water distribution, not meters. They moved slow like they were tired before they started. One of them, stocky, beard, red cheeks, grabbed the hydrant wrench and started setting up. The other stood by the truck smoking with his shoulders hunched, watching the street like he expected something to step out. I walked up and tried to sound normal. You guys flushing? Beard guy glanced at my vest. Yeah. Schedule says I started then stopped. How do you say I found a haunted rule card without getting laughed off the block? He nodded toward my tablet. You got that sweep too? Yeah. He spat into the snow. They really want this zone dead. The other guy flicked his cigarette and ground it out hard. Let's just do it and go. I checked the time again. 2:10. My mouth went dry enough my tongue stuck to my teeth. I tried to hint without sounding insane. You ever notice anything weird out here? Beer guy snorted. Yeah, people. No, like the lines. He looked at me, eyes narrowing. What about the lines? I wanted to tell him. I wanted to pull the laminated card out and shove it in his face. I wanted to say, do not do this after 2:13. Don't. Instead, I heard Dan's voice in my head. Don't start with that shit. So I shut up. 2:12. Beer guy slid the wrench onto the hydrant nut and leaned his weight in. Metal squealed. The other guy stepped back like he wanted distance. 2:13. The minute flipped on my dash like a trapdoor. Beer guy kept turning. The hydrant opened with a cough. Water blasted out, brown at first, then clearer, steaming in the cold air. It hit the street and ran toward the gutter in a fast, shallow river. The sound was loud enough to make the boarded windows vibrate. For a second, it was normal. Just city water and pressure and winter steam. Then the bubbles came. Not foam, not the little fizz of air pockets. Big bubbles, slow and thick, swelling up from the stream like something underneath was taking deep breaths. Each bubble rose, bulged, and popped with a wet slap that made my skin crawl. And the smell changed. Bedtime, wet paper, basement books. Beard guy laughed once, nervous. What the hell is that? Sewage. The other guy didn't laugh. He went still. His cigarette hand froze halfway to his mouth. The bubbles kept coming, and with them came flakes, thin, pale strips that spun in the stream like soggy paper. They curled and flattened and curled again, sticking to the pavement. Rule for screamed in my head. If you see bubbles, stop, cap it, walk away. Beard guy leaned closer, squinting, like he could diagnose it by staring hard enough. The stream shifted. It didn't just splash. It bent, like a hand had gripped it and aimed it. The water snapped sideways and slapped him across the face so hard his head jerked. It hit his mouth. I saw his lips part in shock, and the stream poured straight in. He gagged, stumbled, dropped the wrench, and felt his knees in the spray. His hands went to his throat like he'd swallowed a rag. His cough turned wet and thick like he was trying to cough up a sponge. The other guy moved, finally, but not toward him. Away, backing up fast, eyes wide, like he understood something and wanted distance more than he wanted to help. Shut it, he yelled at me. Not at his partner, at me, like I was the only one with hands. Beard guy's cheeks puffed. His eyes bulged. Something pushed against his lips from the inside. making them stretch. Pale, folding. His mouth opened, and instead of scream, a sheet slid out. Tongue wide at first, then wider, like a strip of wet paper unrolling from his throat. It flapped once in the cold air and stuck to his chin. He clawed at it. His fingers sank in like it was soaked tissue. He made a sound that wasn't human anymore, half gag, half whine, and more of it came. Layer after layer. Slow, relentless, like something was turning him into a printer. I froze like an idiot. My brain kept saying this can't be real. This can't be real. And my body refused to move until I saw the stream do something that broke the last piece of denial. A thin ribbon of water peeled off from the main flow and crawled across the pavement. Uphill. It moved like it had intent, like it was reaching for him. That's when I snapped. I lunged for the hydrant and grabbed the cap with both hands. My gloves were slick. The metal was cold. I jammed it on and twisted, swearing, muscles burning. The hydrant fought me. The threads didn't catch right. The pressure shoved back. The cap shook like something inside was trying to spit it off. I leaned harder, shoulder against the hydrant, grunting, twisting until my wrists hurt. My cut pulsed under the glove like it was cheering for the other side. The other guy was already sprinting to his truck, not looking back, keys in hand like his life depended on ignition. "Help me!" I shouted, and I hated how desperate it sounded. He didn't even turn his head. He just ran. The cap finally caught. The stream cut from a blast to a violent spray, then to a weak spit, then stopped with a choking sound. Beard guy collapsed forward like his strings got cut. His body hit the pavement. The paper skin kept sliding out of his mouth, slower now, like the last bit from a tube you're squeezing empty. I backed away, boots splashing in the puddles, heart slamming so hard it made my vision pulse. I looked down at my glove. Water had sprayed it. The knit was darker now. The tape on my knuckle was soaked again. Only this time, it wasn't just blood in there. It was city water. Zone 12 water. I gagged and stumbled behind my truck and threw up so hard my ribs hurt. Nothing but bile and air, but my body kept trying like it wanted to purge whatever had touched me. When I stood up, the street looked wrong. Too still. Too quiet. The steam drifted off the puddles like breath leaving a mouth. Beard guy lay on the pavement on his side, twitching in tiny jerks. The paper skin around his face fluttered in the wind like a flag. His eyes were open. He wasn't blinking. The other guy's truck roared to life and peeled out, tires spinning on slush. I pulled my phone out with shaking hands and called dispatch again. It rang twice. Water services, the same voice said, "Too calm." Theirs, my voice cracked. I swallowed. "There's an incident. Hydrant flush. The guy, he got hit in the mouth. Something came out of him. I capped it. Silence on the line. Then, quietly, "What time did you open the hydrant?" I didn't open it. They did. I looked at the dash without meaning to. 2:19. It was after 2:13. Another pause. Is the hydrant capped? Yes. Are you bleeding? My stomach dropped. What? Are you bleeding? She repeated, like she was reading a checklist. I stared at my glove. At the damn tape. My knuckle, earlier. It's tape. Leave, she said. What about him? I jerked my chin toward Beard Guy, like she could see. He needs an ambulance. Call 911, she said, still calm. Then leave. Why the fuck are you? Leave Zone 12, she cut in sharper now. Do not touch your face. Do not eat. Do not drink. Go to the yard. Do you understand me? My throat tightened. The laminated card in my tablet sleeve felt like it was burning through plastic. I didn't answer fast enough, so she answered for me. If your supervisor calls, you tell him pressure event. Nothing else. Pressure event? I repeated, dumb. Pressure event, she said again. That's the code. You understand. The line went dead. I stood there with my phone against my ear, listening to nothing, while Beard Guy's body made one small jerk and then went still. I dialed 911 with a thumb that didn't feel like mine. I gave a location. I said injury during hydrant flushing. I did not say paper came out of his throat. I didn't have the energy to fight that disbelief. When I hung up, I realized my mouth was open and I could taste something on my lips. Metallic, stale, like water that's been sitting in a pipe too long. I wiped my mouth with the back of my glove and immediately hated myself because now whatever was on my lips was on my glove, and whatever was on my glove was on my cut. And my brain started spiraling so hard it felt like it was sliding in my skull. I yanked the glove off. My knuckle looked worse. The pale skin had spread. The cut itself was closing in a weird way, like the edges were softening, not scabbing. The skin around it looked thick, almost laminated like it had a sheen. I flexed my hand and the knuckle didn't crease. It folded. I shoved the glove back on like hiding it would undo it. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, getting closer. I pictured EMTs stepping into that puddle, kneeling next to Beard Guy, touching his face. I wanted to run over and scream at them not to, but I also knew how that would look. City worker in a vest yelling nonsense at paramedics. They'd push me back and keep working, and whatever was in that water would find the next open mouth. So I did the cowardly thing. I got in my truck. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield at the hydrant like it might move on its own. The red banner on my tablet pulsed again. Decommissioned sweep. Zone 12. My phone buzzed. Done? I let it ring twice, 3 times, then answer because I was still trained like a dog. What the hell happened over there? He snapped. I got calls. You fucking around. It was a pressure event. I heard myself say, flat and wrong. A pause. A what? Pressure event, I repeated. My tongue felt thick. The words tasted like lies and old water. Hydrant kicked. Guy got hit. Then exhaled hard. Jesus Christ. Is he alive? I don't know, I said, and I hated that too. Ambulance is coming. Get your ass back to the yard, Dan said. We'll write it up. Okay, I whispered. He didn't hang up right away. I heard paper shuffling on his end. Then his voice got quieter, like someone was near him. Listen, he said, and for the first time all day, he sounded not kind, but human. Don't say anything weird. Don't start that warm air shit. Keep it clean. You hear me? I stared at my glove. Yeah, I said. He hung up. I started the truck and drove out of Zone 12 with my shoulders tight and my jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. In the rearview mirror, the hydrant corner shrank until it was just another dead street under gray sky. But the smell stayed in my nose. Bedtime, wet books, that warm breath smell. When I hit the main avenue, I rolled the window down even though it was freezing because the cab air felt thick. I needed cold air in my lungs. I needed something that didn't feel like it came from a pipe. At a red light, I looked down and noticed something stuck to the cuff of my glove. A thin pale strip, curled like soggy paper, clinging to the knit. I stared at it until the light turned green and the car behind me honked. I didn't peel it off. I didn't touch it. I just kept driving with my hand held stiff on the wheel like it wasn't my hand. Back at the yard, I parked crooked and walked inside without signing in right away. My boots left wet prints on the tile. The fluorescent lights made everything look sick. In the break room, guys were talking loud about sports like nothing existed outside the TV. Somebody microwaved fish and the smell made me gag. Dan spotted me and stormed over. You call 911? Yeah. He grabbed my arm and hauled me toward his office like he thought I might run. Up close, his face looked stressed in a way I'd never seen. Sweat at his hairline, eyes darting. He shut the office door and lowered his voice. What happened? I started then stopped, because how do you say it and stay employed and sane? Dan leaned in. Don't bullshit me. I got dispatch on my ass. He glanced toward the ceiling like he didn't want to say names. I got people asking questions. My mouth was dry. Water moved weird. He stared. I know, I said quickly. I know how that sounds. But it bent. It hit him. Dan's eyes flicked to my hands. You hurt. My knuckle, I muttered. He grabbed a pen and started scribbling on a form without looking at it. What time did it start? After 2:13. The pen paused mid-scratch. Dan's face didn't change much, but something in his eyes tightened, like a door closing. He set the pen down slowly. You need to go home. Go home. he repeated. Wash up. Don't. He stopped himself, swallowed, and tried again. Just go. I stared at him. What's zone 12? Dan's jaw worked like he was grinding something between his molars. It's a zone, he said, like an idiot. No, I said, sharper. What is it? He didn't answer. I thought about the laminated card in my tablet sleeve, about the dispatcher asking if I was bleeding like that was normal, about Dan not wanting me to say anything weird. My heart hammered. You've seen the rules. His eyes flicked away. That was all the answer I needed. I left his office before he could tell me not to. I walked out of the yard without clocking out because fuck it, and climbed into my truck. On the drive home, every time I stopped at a light, I kept imagining the water in the pipes under my tires, imagining it sliding, listening. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a full minute with the engine off, hands still on the wheel, listening to the tick of cooling metal. My house looked normal, old but normal. Lights off because I've been gone all day. Neighbor's porch light glowing. A cat darting under a car. I should have felt safe. Instead, my throat tightened like I was about to cry. And that pissed me off more than anything. I'm not a crier. I'm a swallow it guy. I'm a wrap your knuckle and keep going guy. I went inside and kicked my boots off by the door. The air in my house smelled fine. Dust, detergent, old wood. Normal. I walked straight to the sink and turned the faucet on, then stopped with my hand hovering over the handle. My stomach rolled. I stared at the chrome and my own reflection warped in it, and realized I didn't want the water to touch me. I didn't want to touch my mouth. I didn't even want to hear it run. Rule 5. If anyone offers you water, do not drink it. Nobody was offering. The pipes were. I backed away from the sink like it might bite. My glove cuff still had that pale strip stuck to it. It had dried a little curled tighter. It looked like a piece of wet receipt paper. I went to the kitchen table and set my tablet down like it was a bomb. I pulled the laminated card out of the sleeve with 2 fingers. Same black marker, same dumb little list, same words that had felt like a prank and now felt like a warning sign someone nailed to my forehead. I stared at Rule 1 until my eyes hurt. Do not bleed over an open curb box. If you cut yourself, close it and leave. Do not wrap it and continue. I thought about the tape on my knuckle, soaked through twice. Blood and zone 12 water trapped together underneath an adhesive like a little disgusting terrarium. My chest tightened. I stood up so fast the chair scraped. I walked toward the basement door because my house is old and the main shutoff is down there. And in that moment, my brain did this desperate math, like if I shut my own water off, I could shut off whatever might be coming. My hand hit the basement knob. The knob was cold, normal cold, but as soon as I touched it, I felt something else through the metal. A faint vibration, like a truck rumbling by far away. Except there were no trucks, just my quiet street and my own heartbeat. I pulled my hand back and stared at my glove, at the damp tape under it, and I realized I couldn't feel my knuckle the same way anymore. Not numb, not dead, just different, like the sensation had a layer over it. I pressed my thumb into the tape and felt it give a little soft like wet cardboard. My throat tightened again. I put my ear close to the basement door without thinking and immediately hated myself because Rule 3 said, don't put your ear to the pipe, and pipes run through basements, and the way the vibration hummed through the wood made my molars ache. I stepped back, breathing hard, and told myself to stop. Then my tablet pinged on the table. A new work order update flashed on the screen, red banner like a fresh wound. Emergency service call, Zone 12. And under the address field, in plain black text like it was the most normal thing in the world, was my own street name. My house. My pulse slammed in my ears so loud I couldn't hear anything else for a second. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered and the words blurred. And the only thought in my head was this sick, simple one. You can't be on a Zone 12 call at your own address unless Zone 12 followed you. I looked at the basement door again. The vibration felt stronger now, or maybe I was just paying attention. A slow, steady movement like something heavy shifting in a tight tunnel. I stood there in my kitchen with my boots off, my gloves still on, the laminated rule card in my hand, and I realized I didn't want to go downstairs. But I also realized I was already doing what the card told me not to do, pretending I could wrap it and continue. I grabbed the knob again, harder this time, because anger is easier than fear. The basement door stuck like it always does. Old wood swollen in winter. I yanked until it popped open with a crack, and the smell hit me like a wet rag to the face. Vet drywall, old books, warm air. My stomach turned. From down in the dark, I heard it. That slide sound. Slow, heavy, like something turning inside a pipe that was too small for it. The basement stairs creaked under my weight like they were warning me. I kept one hand on the rail, the other hovering like I could grab air if I slipped. The light switch at the top didn't work. Never had. So all I had was the glow from the kitchen behind me and the thin daylight leaking through that tiny basement window at ground level. The smell got stronger with every step. Not sewer, not mold, something in between. Like wet cardboard left in a trash can and then warmed up. Halfway down, the warm air brushed my face again. It felt personal. It felt aimed. I stopped on the last step and just listened, holding my breath like that mattered. The house above me was dead quiet. No vacuum, no fridge cycle, just that faint vibration, deeper than sound, rising through the concrete like a distant engine idling. My basement is basic. Old poured concrete walls, spider webs in the corners. A workbench I never use, plastic bins of stuff I don't want to admit I own. There's a sump pit in one corner with a pump that clicks on during storms. Water heater, furnace, the main shutoff on the copper line coming through the wall, right where the city service enters the house. Meter and backflow preventer assembly right after. All the stuff you don't think about until something goes wrong. The copper pipe along the wall was sweating, not in a normal cold pipe in warm basement way. The droplets on it were too fat, too steady, like it was breathing moisture out. And the pipe, no bullshit, looked faintly darker in one section, like the copper had been rubbed with wet paper until it dulled. I took another step and the vibration sharpened. Something slid inside the line. Same exact sound as the curb boxes. That slow, wet shift, like a heavy thing dragging itself through a tight space. Except now, it was in my house, in my wall, under my feet. I walked toward the main shutoff because my brain only had one instruction left. Cut the line, cut the line, cut the line. The shutoff handle is usually a plain brass lever. I reached for it, and my gloves squeaked on the metal. Warm. The lever was warm. I froze with my hand on it. You don't expect warm metal in a cold basement unless something's wrong. Heat means friction, or a leak, or electricity, something you can explain. This wasn't that kind of warm. It was body warm. I tightened my grip anyway and pushed. The lever didn't move like it should. There was resistance, but not mechanical resistance. It felt like pushing in a wetwood, like the valve was packed. I tried again, harder, shoulder and wrist, and the pipe gave off a tiny shudder. Somewhere inside it, the sliding sound paused, then resumed closer, as if my effort had attracted it. My taped knuckle throbbed under my glove. I could feel the dampness trapped in there like a sealed mouth. I let go and stepped back, breathing through my teeth. On the wall beside the shutoff, someone had written in pencil at some point. Probably the previous owner, probably in the 90s, Maine with an arrow. Under it, faintly, like it had been erased and written over, was another word. Corrections. I stared at that until my stomach clenched. Same word from the curb box door label I'd seen earlier on my route. Same word from the thumbnail image idea that had been rattling around my head since morning. I hadn't told anyone about that cracked door. I hadn't even said it out loud. Yet here it was in my own basement, like the house had been waiting to catch up. I pulled the laminated rule card out of my pocket with shaking fingers. I hadn't noticed earlier because I was too busy not losing my mind, but there was writing on the back too, smudged like it had been handled wet. It wasn't in marker. It looked like it had been pressed in, like an imprint. A list of addresses. At the top was a date, then a time. 2:13 p.m. Under that, a column of street names and house numbers. I scanned it fast, pulse climbing, and there it was, mine about halfway down. My address, the same one that just hit my tablet. My throat went tight, like I'd swallowed a fist. I looked back at the copper line and finally noticed the texture on it. The darker section wasn't tarnish. It was a film. Thin, pale, layered, like paper laid over metal and soaked until it clung. I stepped closer and the film shifted. Not a breeze, a twitch, a faint lift at the edge, the way a wet sticker lifts when it's ready to peel. I don't know why I did it. I swear I don't. Maybe because I needed it to be something I could name. Maybe because I needed proof I wasn't just cracking. I hooked the tip of my glove onto the edge. It didn't feel like slime. It felt like damp cardstock. I pulled. The strip came away with a soft, tearing sound, and the second it separated, the pipe underneath looked wrong. The copper was still copper, but it had faint lines on it, fine branching veins etched into the metal like someone had pressed a leaf into it and left a pattern behind. The strip of my hand sagged. It was heavier than paper should be. It was warm. I held it up toward the basement window light and saw something in it that made my stomach flip. Tiny printed text. Not handwriting, not scribble. Actual printing, like from an old office printer, but blurred and runny from water. Rows and rows of it, like a document that had been pulped and pressed into a skin. I caught a few words before the letters dissolved into mush. Void, correction, employee, service. I dropped it like it burned me. It slapped the concrete with a wet sound and lay there, curling. The vibration in the pipe increased. The sliding sound was now unmistakably moving toward the shutoff, toward me, toward the point where I'd peeled the film. My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. I backed up fast, boots scraping, until my spine hit the workbench. My eyes flicked to the sump pit. The pump sat quiet. The water level in the pit looked normal. Then a bubble rose in the pit anyway, slow and thick, and popped with that same wet slap I'd heard on the street. Another bubble rose, and with it, a thin, pale strip floated up and hung on the surface like a dead leaf. I backed away from the pit and nearly tripped on an extension cord. My heart hammered so hard it felt like my ribs were trying to push out of my chest. I ran up the stairs, 2 at a time, and slammed the basement door so hard the whole frame shook. I locked it. Then I realized how stupid that was because it wasn't coming up the stairs. It was already in my pipes, in my walls, in the lines that ran through my kitchen, my bathroom, my fucking water heater. I stood there in the kitchen, breathing like I just sprinted a mile, staring at the sink like it was a loaded weapon. My tablet chimed again. The emergency service call details updated, and a note appeared under it. Do not dispatch public units. Internal response only. I didn't know what internal meant in this context, but I could guess. It meant the city had a team for this. It meant they'd seen it before. It meant Dan's "don't say anything weird" wasn't just about optics. It was about procedure. My phone buzzed right after, like the universe wanted the timing perfect. Dispatch. I answered without thinking. Hello. No greeting. No small talk. Just that same tired voice stripped down to something sharp. Are you still in your residence? Yes. Is anyone else in the residence? No. Are you bleeding? I looked down at my glove and the tape lump over my knuckle. Not actively. Remove the glove. My stomach dropped. What? Remove the glove, she repeated, slower, like I was a kid. Look at the wound. Tell me if the skin is pale around it. I swallowed. My fingers fumbled. I pulled the glove off and peeled the tape back enough to see. The cut was barely a cut now. The split had sealed into a thin line, like a paper crease. The skin around it was pale and slightly glossy, and the surface didn't look like skin texture anymore. It looked smooth, pressed. My throat tightened. Yeah. Silence on the line, then. Do not drink any water. Do not shower. Do not flush. Turn off your water at the main shutoff. I tried, I said. It won't move. It's packed. Another pause. Is there a second valve? My stomach lurched. What? Is there a second valve? She repeated. Not a standard handle. Something pale. I pictured the paper film strip, the sump bubble, the faint pencil word on the wall. Yes, I whispered. Do not turn it, she said immediately. Do not touch it. Stay upstairs. Open windows if you can. We are sending an internal unit. I snapped, anger finally punching through the fear. Who the hell is we? Stay upstairs, she said, ignoring it. If you hear movement in the pipes, do not follow the sound. I almost laughed. My voice came out shaky instead. Too late. Listen to me, she said, and for the first time she sounded scared, like she'd been holding it back all day. It can't cross air gaps. It needs connection. It needs flow. Do you understand? I stared at the sink, at the faucet, at the small gap between the spout and the basin. Air gap, I whispered. Yes, she said. Keep your drains dry. Do not run water. Do not create flow. Do not. The sound cut her off on my end. A faint click from somewhere in the house. Not a floorboard. Not the fridge. A click like a valve handle tapping metal. Then another. Then a slow creak like a lever trying to move. My eyes snapped to the basement door. I could feel it through the floor like a slow pressure building, like something pushing against a restriction. Like the line itself was flexing. It's trying, I said, voice barely above a breath. Get away from the basement door, dispatch said tight. Now! I backed up, keeping my eyes on the door. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. My own house felt like a box I climbed into and closed behind me. The clicking stopped. For a moment, everything went still. Then the kitchen faucet dripped. One drop. I stared at it like it was a gunshot. Another drop fell, slower, heavier than it should have been. It hit the steel sink with a soft plop. A bubble formed at the spout, swelling like a slow breath. My stomach flipped. I stepped back so hard my hip hit the counter. The bubble grew, glossy and pale, clinging to the metal like it didn't want to fall. Then it detached, not as a droplet, but as a thin sheet that sagged and folded as it dropped into the basin. It landed like wet tissue. I didn't move. I couldn't. The sheet twitched. It wasn't water anymore. It was paper, saturated and alive with something inside it that made it shiver. My throat tightened until it hurt. I heard myself make a small sound, half gag, half laugh, because my brain didn't know what else to do. Dispatch was still on the line, listening to my silence. It's at the faucet, I whispered. Do not touch it, she said, voice rigid. Do not let it touch you. Leave the room. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on the sink. The paper sheet in the basin lifted at one edge like it was tasting air, like it was looking. I turned and moved down the hallway toward the front door, keeping my hands away from my face like she'd ordered earlier. The air in my house felt warmer now, thicker, like humidity creeping up. As I passed the bathroom, I heard a faint gurgle from the toilet tank. I didn't look. I kept walking. At the front door, I fumbled with the lock and yanked it open hard enough the cold air punched into my face. The outside air felt clean in a way that made me want to cry again. I stepped on a porch in socks, and the winter cold bit my feet immediately. I didn't care. I sucked in cold air like it was medicine. Across the street, my neighbor's porch light was on. His truck sat in the driveway. Someone's TV glowed blue behind curtains. Normal life. Normal ignorance. My phone pressed to my ear. I said, "How long until your unit gets here?" "Do not go back inside," dispatch replied. "Stay outside. Do not enter any building in Zone 12. My house is in Zone 12, I snapped. A pause. It is now. The words landed like a weight. I stood on my porch staring into my own doorway, into the warm, dim hallway, and felt a shift in my stomach like grief. Not fear, not anger. Grief. Like something had been taken and I hadn't even noticed it happening. The dispatcher spoke again, lower. "Did you read the rules?" "Yes." "Did you follow them?" I laughed once, bitter. "No." Silence. Then, softly, "That's why it picked you." My skin prickled. "Picked me?" "Light. It finds pressure," she said, as if that explained everything. "It finds leaks. It finds people who open things and bleed. It likes open systems." I stared at the cut on my knuckle, the pale, glossy skin, the crease-like scar. My voice went thin. What is it? She didn't answer right away, and in that pause, I heard something from inside my house. A sound from the kitchen. Not a drip, not a gurgle. A soft rustling, like someone flipping through paper in a quiet room. I felt my throat tighten. It's making noise. Do not listen closely, she said fast. Do not put your ear to anything. Too late again. I was already listening because the sound was in my own walls now. The rustling became a slow, wet clicking, rhythmic, almost like a tongue against teeth. Then I heard my basement door knob turn. Not rattle. Turn. The lock clicked. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd throw up. I locked it. I whispered. Dispatch didn't hesitate. Leave. Get in your vehicle and drive away. Do not drive through Zone 12 streets. Do you have an alternate route? Yeah. Go, she said. I didn't bother with shoes. I ran down the porch steps and across my lawn in socks, slipping on frost, nearly eating shit. I fumbled my keys out of my pocket with numb fingers, got the truck unlocked and climbed in. As I slammed the door, I looked up at my house. The kitchen window glowed faintly, and for a second I saw movement behind it, something pale shifting near the sink. The rustling grew louder, like paper dragged across a table. I started the engine with a shaky gasp, backed out too fast, and nearly clipped the mailbox. As I pulled away, my phone buzzed again. Not dispatch this time. Done? I didn't want to answer. I didn't want to hear his voice. But the fear in me was mixed with a stupid reflex. Answer the boss. Keep your job. Keep your life normal. I answered anyway. What? Where the hell are you? Dan snapped. Leaving, I said. Something's in my house. Dan went quiet for half a beat. Then his voice lowered. Did you bring it home? My blood ran cold. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Answer the question, he said tight. Did you bring it home? I swallowed. My mouth tasted metallic again. I got cut. In Zone 12. A long pause. Dan exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath all day. Jesus, tell me what it is, I demanded. My voice cracked. Tell me what Zone 12 is. Tell me why dispatch is asking if I'm bleeding like it's a fucking checklist. Dan's voice went flatter. You need to do what dispatch tells you. So you know. Another pause. He didn't deny it. I'm not doing this, I said. I'm not being some sacrificial idiot because you people can't handle your own shit. Dan finally spoke, and there was something raw in it I'd never heard from him. Not sympathy, more like weariness. It's not a monster story, he said. It's infrastructure. It's paperwork. It's a mistake that got fed. What mistake? I barked. Dan hesitated, then said, Zone 12 was where they rerouted services during a redevelopment. Temporary lines. Temporary records. They shut off accounts without closing them properly. People got moved on paper before they got moved in real life. The records didn't match the pipes. The system started correcting. My hands tightened on the steering wheel so hard my fingers hurt. You're telling me paperwork did this, I said, voice trembling with anger. Dan didn't laugh. I'm telling you something got into the lines when we started treating people like entries. When we started flushing the zone like it was dirty. When we started decommissioning without actually finishing. I didn't know what to say. My brain tried to shove logic into it and couldn't. It felt like trying to nail smoke to a wall. Behind me, my house shrank in the mirror, quiet and normal looking, like it hadn't just tried to unlock its own basement. Dan spoke again, urgent now. Where are you going? A hotel, I said without thinking. Don't, he snapped. Air gap, remember? It can't cross air gaps, but it can use shared systems. Hotels have shared systems. My stomach lurched. So where do I go? Dan's voice dropped to a whisper. Go to the yard. No, I said immediately. No fucking way. You want to survive, Dan said harsh. Go to yard. Internal unit can isolate you there. They have, he stopped, swallowed. They have correction procedures. My knuckle throbbed like it was laughing. I said, you mean you have a way to fix this? Dan didn't answer. Silence was his answer. I drove past the turn I normally take to the yard and kept going anyway because I didn't trust him. I didn't trust dispatch, and I sure as hell didn't trust the city. I headed toward my sister's place across town. She lives in a newer subdivision, all identical houses and clean sidewalks. No Zone 12 anywhere near it. In my head, distance equaled safety. It was a dumb instinct, but it was all I had. I hung up on Dan mid-sentence. My phone buzzed immediately after with dispatch again, like they were watching me on a map. I didn't answer. I didn't want more instructions. I wanted to be alone. I wanted the whole world to stop talking at me, like I was a problem to be managed. About 10 minutes into the drive, I felt something in my glove. Not the usual dampness. A faint tug at the knit, like a thread pulling. I glanced down at my right hand and almost drove off the road. The cuff of the glove, the part where that pale strip had stuck earlier, was bulging outward like something was pressing from the inside. A thin pale edge peeked out between the knit fibers, like paper trying to push through cloth. My chest locked up. I jerked the truck into the next parking lot, tires squealing on cold asphalt, and threw it in park. I ripped the glove off and flung it onto the passenger seat like it was a snake. My hand looked wrong. The skin around the knuckle was glossier now, and the pale area had spread along the back of my hand in a faint fan, like a watermark. And my veins, Jesus, my veins looked a shade grayer than they should have, like they were fading. I held my hand up to the windshield light, breathing hard, and I saw it. Under the surface of the skin, faintly like a trick of light, there were lines. Not veins, but something like tiny printed text arranged in rows, too small to read, moving when I flexed my fingers. It wasn't tattooed. It wasn't ink. It looked like the skin itself had been pressed into a document. I gagged and leaned out the door and spit, like that could get it out of me. My phone buzzed again. Dispatch. I ignored it. In the cab, the glove on the seat twitched. I stared at it, frozen. The knit moved like something inside. It was shifting position, slow and heavy. Then the glove's fingers lifted slightly, as if a hand were inside, trying to sit up. I grabbed the glove with 2 fingers and hurled it out onto the parking lot. It landed and lay still for half a second, then dragged itself an inch, leaving a dark, damp streak on the asphalt. I slammed the truck door and locked it, breathing like I'd been running. The glove dragged again, another inch, slow and stubborn, like a worm. My stomach turned so hard I thought I'd pass out. I started the truck and peeled out of the lot, leaving the glove behind like a dead part of me. As I merged back onto the road, I realized something and it hit me in a cold wave. It didn't need the glove. The glove was just the first place it could show itself because it was wet and close to my cut. It was already in me. My phone buzzed again, and this time I answered because I needed someone to say the right thing. Dispatch didn't sound angry. She sounded resigned. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Away," I said hoarsely. "That will not work," she said. "It is in your tissue now. Distance will only spread it to new infrastructure." My throat tightened. So what do I do? A pause. Then, return to the yard. I laughed, shaky and ugly. "So you can lock me in some basement like Zone 12. "No," she said. "So we can isolate you and keep it from entering new systems." "You mean so you can quarantine me?" Silence. That silence was confirmation. Anger flared hot in my chest. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," she said. Her voice cracked slightly. That tiny crack was the most human thing I'd heard from her. "But you bled into an open line. It marked you as a correction point." "A correction point," I repeated, numb. "It will follow pressure differentials," she said. "It will seek to close what is open. Leaks, accounts, people, anything that doesn't match the record." My hand shook on the wheel. "So what? It's going to close me?" She didn't answer directly. "Do you feel thirsty?" I swallowed. My mouth was dry as sand. My tongue felt thick. "Yes." "Do not drink," she said immediately. "Not even bottled water. Not even soda. Do not introduce new fluid. It will use it." I blinked hard, vision swimming. I couldn't stop thinking about Beard Guy's mouth, the way the paper had unrolled from his throat like a document printing itself out of him. I couldn't stop picturing myself doing that alone somewhere while no one found me until the smell hit. My voice dropped. "What happened to him?" Dispatch's tone went flat again. Professional armor back up. Internal units handled it. Is he dead? A pause. He is contained. Contained. Not alive. Not dead. Contained. My stomach rolled. Go to the yard, she repeated. We have a procedure. If you arrive within the first 6 hours, it is possible to reverse surface integration. Surface integration. Like my skin was laminate on a file folder. I wiped sweat off my forehead with my left hand and immediately regretted it. Like touching my own face was now a risk. Okay, I whispered. Okay, I'm coming. I turned the truck around at the next exit. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Every stoplight felt like time leaking away. My mouth kept getting drier. My tongue kept sticking. I could almost taste paper now, dry, fibrous, like chewing on a napkin. As I pulled into the yard, 2 unmarked white vans were parked near the back gate. No city logo, no markings, just white boxes sitting still like teeth. Dan stood outside by the main building, not smoking for once. He looked pale. When he saw my truck, he raised a hand like he was signaling a plane. I parked and climbed out, legs stiff. Dan approached but didn't get too close. He kept a distance like I was contagious, which I guess I was. You drink anything? He asked. No. You touch your face. Maybe once. Don's jaw tightened. God damn it. Tell me what you're doing. I snapped. Tell me what this procedure is. Dan glanced toward the vans. The back doors were open now, and I could see inside. Plastic sheeting, bright work lights, a metal cart with sealed containers. Not medical. Not exactly. More like hazmat mixed with office storage. A man stepped out of the van wearing a plain gray coverall. No name patch. No logo. Just gray. He had gloves on, face shield lifted. He looked like a guy who could disappear into any crowd. He walked toward me with a clipboard like that was normal, like I wasn't standing there with my skin turning into paperwork. Employee ID, he said. I stared at him. Are you serious? He didn't blink. Employee ID. I rattled it off because my mouth was too dry to argue. He wrote it down, then asked time of exposure. Dan answered for me. Around 9. Cut happened around 9. The gray man nodded as if that was just weather information. Any flush exposure? Dan hesitated, then, yes. After 2:13, the gray man's eyes flicked to Dan, and for the first time, I saw something in his face. A quick flash of irritation. Not at me. At Dan. Like Dan should have known better. He looked back at me. Show the wound. I peeled my right glove off. Different glove now. A spare I'd put on after abandoning the first one. My hand felt cold in the air, but also weirdly numb. The gray man leaned in, but didn't touch. He angled his face shield down and stared at my knuckle. Glossing, he murmured, texturing beneath dermis. Early integration. I swallowed hard. Can you fix it? He didn't answer that. He asked, have you noticed any changes in thirst, taste, or hearing? Hearing. You heard movement, he said like a statement. Yes. He nodded once. Okay. Dan shifted his weight. We should. The gray man cut him off without looking. Bring him. Dan looked at me, eyes tight. Just do what he says. What if I don't? I said, voice low. What if I walk out of here and go tell the news that the city has a paper thing in the water? Dan's face pinched like pain. They'll call you crazy. Then I'll post it, I said. I'll put it everywhere. The gray man finally looked up from my hand and met my eyes. He didn't look threatening. He looked tired. You can do that, he said calmly, and it will still spread because it will follow you. It will use your fear and your movement and your plumbing. It doesn't care about belief, only connection. My throat tightened. So, I'm a carrier. He didn't deny it. You're an access point. My stomach dropped again. So you're going to what, cut me off? He nodded toward the van, and for the first time his voice softened, just a fraction. We're going to try to break its path. We're going to try to make you boring to it. I followed them into the van because there wasn't another choice that ended with me not dissolving in a paper in a motel bathroom. Inside, the van was lined with plastic like a kill room, and the bright lights made everything too sharp. A metal chair sat in the middle with a drain pan under it. On a folding table were tools I recognized and tools I didn't. There was a curb box key on the table. There were also stacks of paper, clean, blank sheets in wrapped reams like office supplies. My stomach rolled. What's with the paper? The gray man snapped on a new pair of gloves over his gloves. It prefers what it understands. That doesn't answer me. He picked up the curb box key and held it like a scalpel. Your city runs on paper and water, he said. You don't see it, but that's what it is. Records and flow. When those disagree, pressure builds. Something tries to correct. I stared at the blank reams. So you feed it paper? We give it something to close that isn't you, he said. Sometimes it works. Sometimes, I repeated. Dan stood by the open door like he wanted to be anywhere else. He wouldn't look at the table. The gray man gestured to the chair. Seats, he said. The metal was cold through my jeans. He leaned close to my hand again. I need you to keep your mouth closed unless I ask questions. Do not spit. Do not cough into your hand. If you feel pressure in your throat, raise your left hand. I swallowed hard and nodded. He took a small bottle from the table, not labeled, clear liquid inside. He dabbed on a swab and pressed it gently to the pale, glossy skin around my knuckle. It burned like fire. I flinched, teeth grinding, and he held it there anyway, steady like he'd done this 100 times. The glossy skin fizzed. Not like chemical fizz, like tiny bubbles forming under the surface and popping. I felt a weird sensation, like something loosening, like tape peeling from inside my hand. My mouth watered from pain, and my brain screamed at me not to swallow, not to drink, not to let anything move. He lifted the swab, and the skin looked slightly less glossy, slightly more like skin. I exhaled through my nose, shaking. That's one layer, he said. One layer, I echoed, voice tight. He reached for the blank paper ream and tore a sheet free. Then he did something I'll never forget. He held the sheet close to my knuckle, not touching, just hovering at a centimeter away. The sheet trembled, not from airflow, from something inside my skin responding. The sheet bowed inward like it wanted to stick to me. The gray man's eyes narrowed behind the face shield. There, he murmured, almost satisfied. It's hungry. My stomach lurched. He pressed the sheet to my knuckle. The paper stuck instantly, not with glue, but with a wet suction like skin-to-skin contact. I felt a tug, not on the surface, but deeper, like something was trying to pull itself out through my cut line. My vision flashed white. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. The gray man held the paper there with 2 fingers and then, slowly, peeled it away. When he lifted it, a thin pale film came with it, threaded out of my skin like a wet sticker. It was warm and heavy, and I swear to God it had faint printed text on it, blurred like it had been soaked. I gagged but kept my mouth closed. The gray man dropped the film onto the metal tray, and it slapped wetly and curled. My hand throbbed, but the throbbing felt more normal now, like injury throb, not integration throb. He repeated it. Another sheet, another peel. Each time a little less film came off, each time the burning swab followed, each time my hand felt like it was being sanded from the inside. After the 3rd peel, my throat tightened. Not from fear, from pressure, a slow swelling in my neck like I'd swallowed a lump of cotton. I raised my left hand like he'd instructed. The gray man glanced up. Throat pressure? I nodded, eyes watering. He didn't panic. He reached for a small container and opened it. Inside were metal rings like hose clamps, but smaller, clean, sterile. He stepped closer. Open your mouth. I hesitated. Open, he said, voice firm. I opened. He didn't put anything in my mouth. Instead, he placed one of the rings against the outside of my throat, just under my jaw, and pressed lightly. The ring was cold. The pressure inside my throat shifted as if something had bumped into a barrier. The gray man's eyes sharpened. There you are, he whispered, like he was talking to an animal. I felt something move in my throat, a slow slide upward, like a tongue trying to find a gap. My eyes went wide. I tried not to cough. Dan made a small sound at the van door, like he was about to vomit. The gray man pressed the cold ring harder, and I felt the movement inside my throat stall, then retreat. A dry, rasping sound came out of me involuntarily, like air dragging over paper. The gray man held the ring there for 10 seconds, then lifted it. The pressure eased. I sucked in air through my nose like I'd been underwater. "Why is it in my throat?" I croaked. The gray man didn't sugarcoat it. "It follows moisture," he said. "Your mouth is wet. Your lungs are wet. It likes wet." My stomach turned, but a piece of my brain latched onto something. "Air gap," I whispered. He nodded. "You are the air gap now. That's why we're trying to keep it from bridging." He turned to Dan. "We need the ledger." Dan's face tightened. "Do we have to?" "We have to," the gray man said flatly. Dan walked away like his boots weighed 100 pounds. I sat there in the metal chair, hands shaking, staring at the curled film on the tray. It looked like someone had peeled a label off a file folder, except it had the warmth and weight of flesh. The gray man washed my face carefully, like he was measuring how close I was to breaking. "You're not the first," he said quietly. My throat tightened again, but this time it was anger. "How many?" He didn't answer. Dan returned carrying something wrapped in a black trash bag. He set it on the table like it was radioactive and peeled the bag back. Inside was an oversized ledger book. Thick, old, the kind of book you'd see in a courthouse archive. The cover was stained and warped like it had been wet and dried too many times. Stamped on the front in faded red ink. Void. My blood went cold. "That's from," I started. Dan didn't look at me. "County records," he muttered. His voice sounded sick. "They pulled it when this started. Kept it off-site." The gray man opened the ledger carefully. The pages inside weren't normal paper. They were stiff, slightly translucent, like parchment that had been soaked in something and dried. And they smelled exactly like Zone 12. Wet books. Warm breath. The gray man flipped to a page with a tab. My eyes landed on a column of addresses, and I saw mine again, printed cleanly in dark ink. Next to it was a status line. "Open. Done swallowed hard." The gray man spoke softly, almost respectfully. "It wants everything closed," he said. "If the ledger says open, it will attempt closure." I stared at my address on that page. My house reduced to ink. "You're telling me my life is a checkbox." Dan's voice cracked. "It's not supposed to be." The gray man dipped a pen into a small bottle of ink on the table. The ink looked wrong. Too thick, too dark, like old blood. He positioned the pen over my address line. "This is the part you don't like," he said to me, voice calm. "If we close it here, it may stop trying to close it through you." My stomach flipped. "What does close it mean?" The gray man didn't answer directly. He asked, "Do you intend to return to that residence in the next week?" I stared at the ledger, at the stamp, at the word open next to my home like my house was a door it could crawl through. "No," he whispered. "Den ek shaled shekili." The gray man nodded once, then drew a single line through open and wrote closed. The moment the pen lifted, I felt it. A shift in my body, like pressure equalizing, like my ears popping after flight. The dryness in my mouth eased slightly. My throat loosened. My skin stopped crawling. Then from somewhere deep in the van, maybe in the drain pan, maybe in the curled film on the tray, I heard that rustling sound again, sharp and angry like someone crumpling paper in a fist. The ledger pages fluttered, though no one touched them. Dan took a step back, face pale. The gray man closed the ledger with a firm slap and wrapped it back in the trash bag fast. "It doesn't like being redirected," he said. My voice trembled. "Is it gone?" The gray man looked at my hand again, then at my face, then at my throat. "It's quieter," he said. "Not gone." Quiet wasn't comfort. Quiet was waiting. Dan stared at me like he didn't know what to say. For once, he looked like he wanted to apologize and couldn't find the language. I flexed my fingers. The skin creased more normally now, but the pale gloss was still there in patches like a stain you can't wash out. "What happens now?" I asked. The gray man took off his outer gloves and dropped them into a sealed bag. "Now you do not touch municipal water for 72 hours, he said. "Nos chawers. No sink, no toilet flush if you can avoid it. You use bottled sanitation and you stay in a controlled environment. Controlled environment, I repeated, numb. Dan's voice was small. We can put you in the office trailer. There's a porta-john outside. Different system. Different system, I echoed. Everything was systems now. Nothing was just a bathroom. My phone buzzed in my pocket again, and I flinched like it was pain. The gray man held up a hand. Don't answer. I didn't. The buzzing stopped. For a moment, in the bright plastic-lined van, it almost felt like the worst had passed. Then I heard it. A slow, wet sliding sound, faint but unmistakable, coming from the curb box key lying on the table. I stared at it, heart punching hard. The key wasn't moving, but the metal vibrated slightly, like something far away was tugging on the connected network the key belonged to. The gray man's eyes locked on it too, and his jaw tightened. It's still hunting pressure, he murmured. Then swallow it. In the yard. The gray man nodded once. It follows the work. It follows the routes. It follows the people who open boxes. My stomach dropped. So it can come here. It can come anywhere the system is open, he said. I thought about the hydrant flush, about how the water bent, about the paper unrolling from a man's throat, about my own faucet spitting a sheet into my sink like a sick joke. I whispered, then why keep Zone 12 open at all? Dan's face twisted. We tried to shut it off, he said, voice rough. We tried to cap everything. It made it worse. The gray man looked at Dan sharply. Don't. Dan's eyes flashed with something like shame. He shut up. I stared at both of them. Tell me. Dan swallowed and finally forced the words out. When you cut flow completely, he said quietly, it looks for other flow. It pushes. It finds weak points. It blows joints. It makes leaks in places you don't want leaks. The gray man didn't contradict him. My throat went tight again. So you keep it fed, controlled. The gray man's silence was confirmation. I sat back in the chair, numb, and realized the city wasn't fighting it. They were managing it. Like a badline item you can't erase, only hide. I looked at my hand again and saw faintly, maybe imagination, maybe not, tiny straight lines under the skin like text waiting to print. A bitter laugh escaped me. So what? I'm supposed to go back to reading meters like nothing happened. Dan didn't answer. The gray man spoke instead, quiet but direct. You will not return to field work, he said. You are now sensitive. Sensitive, I repeated, disgusted. You will be monitored, he continued. If you begin hearing movement in dry pipes, if you taste paper, if you wake up thirsty and your tongue feels thick, call dispatch immediately. I stared at him. And if I don't, the gray man's gaze didn't flinch. Then you will become a correction. Cold ran through me. What does that mean? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I'd already seen what it meant on the street. They moved me to the office trailer behind the yard like I was radioactive. It had a space heater, a cot, and a stack of bottled water on the counter that I wasn't allowed to drink. They gave me electrolyte packets and a spray bottle for my hands. They gave me wipes. They gave me rules. Rules stacked on rules stacked on rules. Night fell, and with it came that awful quiet again. The hallway after a scream quiet. I lay on the cot with my coat over me, staring at the trailer ceiling, listening to every tiny sound. Around 2:10 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Stop opening US. My stomach flipped. I read it again, slow, like the words might change. Stop opening US. At 2:13, the trailer heater clicked off. The air went cold fast. I heard a faint drip somewhere outside, and my whole body, tense like a trap, was about to spring. Then, faintly, through the thin trailer wall, I heard it. Rustling, like someone flipping pages. I sat up slowly, heart hammering. The yard outside was dark. Floodlights on poles threw harsh white pools across wet pavement. The vans were parked in shadow. The main building sat silent. The rustling continued, steady, patient. Then the sound shifted into a slow, wet, clicking, rhythmic like a tongue testing teeth. My mouth went dry instantly. My tongue felt thick. I pressed my lips together hard and forced myself to breathe through my nose. The clicking got closer. Not footsteps, not outside on gravel. Closer in a way that made no spatial sense, like it was traveling through the thin lines of water, trapped in every system. Condensation, leftover moisture, the damp in the ground. I looked at my right hand. The pale glossy patch on my knuckle had widened slightly in the cold air, and the skin creased in a way that looked too straight, too neat, like a fold line on a document. I whispered, "No," like that mattered. The rustling paused. For one quiet second, it felt like whatever was listening had heard me. Then the trailer door handle twitched. Not rattled. Twitched once, small like a test. The lock held. The handle twitched again. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body went rigid, eyes locked on that cheap metal handle, like it was the only thing holding reality together. In the thin gap under the door, something pale slid. Not a shadow, not moonlight. A thin strip, flat and wet, easing itself along the floor like paper dragged by a slow hand. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I watched the strip creep farther in, millimeter by millimeter, as if it could squeeze under the door the way water can. Air gap, I thought, desperate. Air gap, air gap. But the strip wasn't water anymore. It was paper that had learned to move like water. It slid fully under the door and lay on the trailer floor, curling at the edges. It looked like a torn form, a document ripped from a file. It twitched. Then, slowly, it folded itself. Once, twice. Neat. Sharp creases like a practiced hand. It folded into the shape of a small, crude rectangle, like a badge. It stood up on its own, wobbling, propped by its own damp stiffness. Printed across it in blurred black letters was a word I could still read. Employee. And beneath that, in thicker ink, like someone had pressed the pen hard. Corrections. My breath hitched. My eyes watered. I tasted paper in my mouth like my body was trying to join the joke. I backed up on the cot until my shoulders hit the wall. My hand shook. The badge-shaped paper thing tilted slightly toward me, like it was looking. Then it moved again, sliding across the floor with that slow, wet sound, coming closer to the cot, to me, to my feet. I snapped. I grabbed my boot, still wet from earlier, still crusted with salt, and threw it. The boot hit the paper badge and smashed it flat. For half a second, I thought I'd won. Then the flattened paper lifted at the edges and peeled itself off the floor like a wet sticker. It reformed into a strip, then into two strips like it was splitting. The strips slid apart, one heading toward the trailer's sink, the other toward the trailer's tiny drain in the floor. My stomach dropped. It was mapping exits. It was finding connections. I lunged off the cot, grabbed the spray bottle they'd given me, and blasted the strip near the sink with disinfectant until my hand cramped. The strip curled violently, shuddered, and went still, edges fraying. The other strip reached the floor drain. It paused as if tasting. Then it thinned, stretched, and began to sink into the drain like wet paper dissolving into water. "No," I whispered again, voice breaking. "No, no, no." I didn't have a cap. I didn't have a wrench. I didn't have anything except panic. So I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the Ledger trash bag that Dan had left in the trailer corner. Because of course they'd left it near me, and I slammed it down over the drain, kneeling on it like a man, tried to hold a lid on a pot that wants to boil over. The bag crinkled under my weight. Underneath it, I felt movement, a slow pressure pushing up, testing, rustling, closer now, coming from beneath my knees like the ground was flipping pages. My mouth filled with saliva, and I swallowed reflexively, then immediately panicked because swallowing meant moisture, and moisture meant connection, and my brain was spiraling hard. I pressed my weight down harder, shaking. The pressure below pushed back stronger. I felt the bag stretch slightly, as if something under it was swelling. My throat tightened. My vision narrowed. Then from somewhere behind me, the trailer's sink dripped again. One heavy drop, then another. I realized in a cold flash that it didn't need the drain. It was already in the trailer's plumbing. The strips were just probes, just tests, just a way to distract me while it found the easiest path. I sat there straddling a trash bag over a floor drain like an idiot and understood exactly how this thing killed people. Not by jumping out and ripping them apart, by making them react, by making them open, by making them create flow. The paper in Zone 12 wasn't hunting bodies. It was hunting systems. And I was a system with blood and saliva and fear. I don't know how long I held that bag down. Minutes, hours. Time did weird things. My knees went numb. Sweat soaked my back. My mouth went so dry my tongue felt like sandpaper. At some point, the pressure under the bag eased slightly, like it lost interest. The rustling faded. The sink stopped dripping. The heater clicked back on. I didn't move for a long time after that. I stayed frozen, listening, waiting for the next test. When morning finally came, Dan opened the trailer door with a key and stood there like he was afraid to step inside. He took one look at me, kneeling over the drain, and his face went gray. "What happened?" he whispered. I laughed, weak and ugly. "It tried to clock in," I said. Dan didn't laugh. He looked like he might cry, and that scared me more than anything because Dan doesn't cry. The gray man came in behind him, scanned the room, eyes sharp. He spotted the frayed, disinfected strip near the sink, the crushed badge remnants, the bag over the drain. His jaw tightened. "It's adapting," he murmured. Dan looked at him. "So what do we do?" The gray man stared at my hand, at my glossy knuckle, then met my eyes through the face shield. "We close the open accounts," he said quietly. "All of them." Dan's face twisted. It's the only way to stop it hunting," the gray man cut in. "Or we keep feeding it forever." My stomach turned. "What does closed mean?" I asked hoarsely. The gray man didn't answer right away. He looked past me, out toward the yard, toward the city beyond. Then he said, softly, "It means acknowledging what you tried to erase." Dan's jaw worked. He looked away. I sat on the cot, exhausted, and realized the city had built a monster out of neglect and paperwork and bad math, and now it wanted the bill paid in flesh and water. I left that job 2 days later. Not with a resignation, not with a goodbye. I just walked out and never went back. I didn't go back to my house either. The internal unit closed my address in the ledger, which meant legally, on paper, my residence was now something else. Vacant, decommissioned, whatever word made the system stop reaching for it. I'm still paying for that in ways I can't even explain. Mail that goes missing, accounts that don't exist, a lease application that comes back rejected because my social suddenly doesn't match records. Like the city's corrections ripple outward. And I still don't drink tap water. Not anywhere. Because sometimes, late at night, when I'm half asleep and the world is quiet, I swear I can hear it in pipes that shouldn't be connected to me. A faint rustling, like pages turning far away. A slow, wet click, rhythmic, patient. And if I sit up in bed and listen too hard, my tongue starts to feel thick. My mouth gets dry. My hand itches around the knuckle like skin wants to fold. So I stop listening. I keep my mouth closed. I keep my drains dry. And I'm telling you this for one reason. If you ever pop a curb box and the air coming out feels warm, if it feels like breath, close it and leave. Don't be a hero. Don't be curious. Don't wrap it and continue. Because it doesn't care who you are. It only cares what's open.